Well, we are live. It is just Kevin for now. Welcome to the Monday SorareFP stream. Hopefully Bob's going to be joining me. If not, you're going to get a classic Clamp One rambling stream for today. But as I'm sure you know, we're in the midst of, I think, game week 57. So game started last night on the championship series. Dodgers blew out the Mets. So that's going to be interesting. 2 games, one starting very soon, probably in an hour. So I'll probably try and wrap this up in an hour. That's, yeah, I feel like those words will come back to haunt me. But yeah, Bob should be joining. The plan is to talk about this is an episode we are unofficially calling Hot Young Guys. Perhaps next week we'll do a Hot Old Guys episode, but for now Bob wanted to talk about his favorite Hot Young Guys. So we are going to be doing that. If Bob joins, it's going to be there might be some rehashing. I just started making a list of the guys that I like, and I wanted to take a look at the guys that had big years this year that kind of came out of not necessarily nowhere, but made a big leap. And so the guys that the first ones that jumped to mind for me were Lawrence Butler, Brenton Doyle, a couple shortstops, Zach Neto, Mason Wynn, and those guys didn't put up, I think, as huge of weeks, but they were certainly playable. Mark Vientos is one. Rooker in Oakland, another big one. Yainer Diaz. Those are all guys that I was playing regularly in lineups, and that put up scores that could either keep you in a week or even help win a week for sure. Guys like, Butler, with some just insane, multi-home run games and all of that. A couple other guys that I wanted to look at were guys from 2 seasons ago, particularly Corbin Carroll and Gunnar Henderson. I think part of what Bob wanted to look at were not just the studs, not the Jackson Chirios and Jackson Merrill, the top tier prospects who kind of lived up to the hype, but more. And I think in a lot of cases it's going to be kind of post hype guys. So I know a few of the guys that I had to look at going forward are guys like Matt Wallner, who I was super high on coming into this season. He finished the second half of last season, I think, playing up to his potential, just hitting a ton of home runs, just great power. To stick with the Twins theme, Royce Lewis is going to be an interesting one. Someone that who probably had the first slump of his professional career, starting probably August this year. So he's another one that it'll be, I think, interesting to look at. Parker Meadows is another guy that going into this year, I was hopeful for, someone that looked like, he was going to be given the chance to lead off for the Tigers, who I thought would be a surprisingly good offense. I still remember talking to one of my friends who bartends nearby, and he's a huge baseball fan. And so, he was saying, like the Twins look great this year. They're going to run away with it. I was like, man, if this is probably the toughest division, I remember, in the past 10 or 20 years, because it looked like, it's going to be the Guardians and the Twins again, but also the Royals with all the starting pitching they'd added, and the Tigers with all the young guys that they had coming up, as well as fully healthy Tarek Skubal. I liked Reese Olson, all that. So yeah, Tigers were an offense that looked like they were going to take a step this year, not only Parker Meadows stepping into a regular role, but Gary Carpenter, Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson, the hope was would take a step. That didn't necessarily happen, but yeah, Parker Meadows was someone who it looked like was going to be given the chance to lead off. And what's up, Bob? You ready to join us? All right, we got a thumbs up from Bob. Welcome, Bob. How are you?
Super, man. How's it going?
It's going good. Just mumbling about the Tigers, which yeah, man. I don't know if I've ever been more disappointed about the Tigers, losing a series, but I was kind of excited to see, Scooble Chaos 2024 going forward, but that was certainly a fun run, right?
It was exciting. This is what baseball does. And baseball is one of those unique type of sports where, unlike basketball, where typically the best teams, you tend to see it more often, the 1 or 2 seeds win it all because over a 7-game series, the best players tend to be the best. They tend to win out. Whereas in baseball, with short series, a 1-game, a 3-game type series, anything can happen. Your team can get hot for 2 or 3 days and win a couple games. And it's absolutely fantastic. It was wild what was going on, and Cleveland eventually showed up, and it's not all the main studs that you would expect. Stephen Kwan, would he have like 11 or 17 hits? Like, this is kind of what happens, and this is what has made baseball incredible so far, like in this postseason. And I mean, you just don't know what happens. I mean, you look at the game last night, Kev, and the Mets don't look too great, right? But the Mets can come out and win 14-0 tomorrow or today in a couple hours. Like, and that's what's absolutely fantastic about it.
Yeah, I mean, I would be shocked if Jack Flaherty puts on another pitching performance like that, and he might. Like, I mean, again, yeah, anything could happen. He certainly, has done that at times in the past, but for him to consistently do it is more of a question. But yeah, it's wild. That's certainly not how I thought that game was going to go, right?
Me either. You know what? I actually have a Jack Flaherty bobblehead now. I'm one of like probably 5 people in America that do. So
nice. What team?
What is it?
The Cards?
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Jack Flaherty. Yeah, dude. I actually when I won a unique competition in the first season, and that I won his unique card, believe it or not. So
love it.
Good old Jack. Now he's in the playoffs. He's doing something fantastic, and it's pretty wonderful. So yeah, good times all around, man. Good times all around.
Fun stuff. Yeah, so just kind of the intro was just kind of talking about what I'm unofficially calling our Hot Young Guys segment. And so I ran through just a few of the names of guys kind of from last year, that, were cheap or maybe weren't that highly thought of. And so, some of those guys like Butler and Doyle were guys that were kind of big, guys that maybe weren't as huge, but I think we're certainly playable. Like the 2 young shortstops, Neto and Mason Wynn. And if you'll notice, there's a theme here somewhat, like guys that are hitting at the top of the order. I think all of them at one point or another were leading off, or at least in the top 4. But Brent Rooker was one. I figured if you didn't make it, I was going to be filling for you on Brent Rooker. Vientos, Yainer Diaz. I also wanted to look back at the 22 young guys that I fell absolutely in love with, Corbin Carroll and Gunnar Henderson, just to look at what their prices did in the offseason. Because I think for some of those guys going forward, and I had mentioned, we kind of wanted to look at some of not the huge guys like Chiriot and Merrill Jackson, but the little more under the radar guys like Brenton Doyle. But to look at the guys like Wyatt Langford and Jackson Holliday, the guys that people have already kind of identified as top tier studs, and see what their prices did. Because I know I just kept buying Corbin Carrolls and Gunnar Hendersons, and they were fairly expensive to start off with. They got pretty cheap during the off season, and then once they both came out hot last year, both just spiked hugely when they lived up to their potential. But yeah, so is there anyone you want to start off talking about, or is there anything else you want to touch on before we dive into the hot young guys?
Not really. I mean, it makes sense, and what I'm looking for here is I'm looking for guys that I'm willing to put into lineups, guys that can put points on the board. So the guys that you just mentioned, guys like Lawrence Butler, right? Like he hit at the top of the lineup. He could steal bases, 20 home runs, 20 stolen base type of look and feel.
Sometimes 4 or 5 home runs in the same game.
Yeah. But like these are the kind of guys that you're really looking for. You want to try to get them cheap, and you might even be able to sell them a little bit more later on. And so that's what I'm looking for. I'm also looking at young pitchers that kind of get overshadowed when it goes through. Like, can they take that step up to the point where you feel comfortable using them on an every week kind of basis, or an every other week if the matchups are good, And so, like, who I'm really leaning towards here is like we know we love Paul Skeens, right? Like, obviously Paul Skeens is going to be one of the best guys you're going to have, but people have stopped talking about his teammate Jared Jones, right? And this is a guy that I feel I've started him in a number of NL competitions and a number of competitions. And so, like, he's the type of player that I think quietly could be really good for a lot of people in Sorare next year. He has that upside potential to strike out 8, 9 guys, go 7 innings. And those are the kind of starts that win you competitions, that win you cards and rewards. And so that's what I'm looking for in some of these young guys. I think that relief pitching, guys that get set up, they can do those kind of things, are who you're looking for. I mean, again, we can go back to my A's and Mason Miller, who was a starting pitcher last year, and he became like one of the better, more reliable closers you can use. If the A's end up winning 15 more games next year, he's the best closer in baseball.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and so like this is the kind of stuff that we're kind of searching for here, and it's, guys like Corbin Carroll, like we understand, like they have all of the hype. They're all of the guys, like we know who these guys are. We know who Jackson Holliday is. We know who Jackson Churio is. We know who Jackson Merrill is. And basically every single Jackson that's ever played baseball is going to be great, including Bo. But like what I want are some of the smaller guys that we're not enough. Zach Neto is a great example of that. A guy that you feel comfortable putting in your lineup. A guy like Mason Wynn, who I used him a lot this year, actually. Whenever St. Louis had 4 games, Mason Wynn was into my lineups, like no matter what was going on. So that's who I'm kind of looking for when I'm looking at young up and coming kind of players. I'm looking for young pitchers.
You can say it, Bob. When you're looking for hot young guys.
Looking for hot young guys. That's it, man. That's it. We know where we're going here. So, but yeah, and there's a lot of guys on here that we're gonna hear a lot of guys that are coming off of injuries and stuff like that. But specific guys, I don't know if you have a list or if you want to start off with any of them. But I mean, I always go to Oakland. So
let's start with our Oakland guys. And sorry, I was just looking at Clay Holmes. I don't remember where I even read this, but Clay Holmes, I think, is a free agent going into this offseason, and it sounds like he might get converted into a starter. So if you're one of those guys that likes to scope out potential relievers turned starting pitchers like Reynaldo Lopez and Garrett Crochet, Clay Holmes might be one of those guys, and I do think his stuff might play well for that. And the sinkers, kind of a Framber type pitcher. All right, but yeah, let's get to the. You want to talk about
Clay Holmes,
guys that haven't popped yet for the A's, or guys that like and Butler and.
If you're going to talk about a Yankee and Clay Holmes, I have to tell everybody how much I dislike him as a baseball player in general. If you want Clay Holmes as a potential reliever that's going to be a starter next year, guys, I will gladly sell you mine. He is just one of I have no confidence in him. Like the difference is he has head issues, which I get it. Like it's hard to be a closer. He's come in, he's been doing well in the holder, like the 7th, 8th inning type of role, but it's a lot less stress. And he's not precise enough with his control. And it's a problem, especially if you're going to be a starting pitcher and you're going to leave floating hangers all over the place. Like it's not going to be ideal. So,
and if you're new to the SorareFP world, or Sorare really in general, because Bob is everywhere. Bob's a Yankees fan, and Yankees fans just hate Clay Holmes. So I just understand that, his view of Clay Holmes is going to be skewed by that. Most normal people are like, Clay Holmes is fine. He's not an ideal closer. Right?
Like, listen, if your wife ever tells you that it's fine, that means it's not. Okay. So when Kevin says,
was that good for you? It was fine.
When Kevin says Clay Holmes is fine, that means he's a dumpster pile, and I hope he goes to the Boston Red Sox. So there we go.
Nice.
Yeah. No,
we're also gonna make shirts that say "fine is fine." Like fine is fine. Like you can for sure get by with guys that are fine.
But no, I mean, the guy that I'm really talking about with Oakland, because they got a lot of young up and coming guys, is Max Schumann,
Okay.
who is kind of like your utility player infielder who he pings back and forth between the top and bottom of the lineup, but he
How do
gets
I
on
spell his
base.
name?
It is Schuemann.
All right, there he is. Oh, I was going with Schneeman, not Schumann.
Yep.
Do the A's have a Schumann, or is he on a different team?
I don't know. I mean, that's how I say it. Maxi, yes.
No, I
So
mean, yeah, you're all
he's.
good.
I've watched them play enough where he has the ability to do good things. Like whenever I got updates of someone hit a home run, it was Lawrence Butler, Brent Rooker, or magically it's Max. And so like these are just the kind of guys that I'm looking for on an AL team that can do a little bit more. And I hope that he can take the next step up. If he can take the next step up, Kev, he becomes a very solid option to hit behind Lawrence Butler in that lineup. So a guy that goes from, hitting like consistently in like the 6 to 8 range can be your two hitter. So like a lineup of Butler, Schumann, Rooker is a lot better moving forward. And this is you got to be careful though because like he played the entire year. This isn't like a Zach Geloff thing where Geloff came in last year and was smacking the ball all over the place and then completely fell off because people figured him out. Schumann's been there for a little bit. He's had some time. And I like the way that he's going. Obviously, like not all the numbers are going to look great. He's a rookie. He's a rookie on a bad team in a bad organization. But he's a guy that I've kind of liked. And you see that like they've been willing to give him some spots hitting first in the lineup at the top of the lineup. And you see he does very well at the bottom. He's one of those guys that turned the lineup over to Butler and Rooker that allowed them to get a lot of RBI and stuff like that. So, I mean, I think that he had a lot to do with Rooker's success that goes in there. Honestly, I mean, when you have a guy that can turn over, get on base, it allows Lawrence Butler to freely swing. It allows Brent Rooker to freely swing and get guys in scoring position. So this is the kind of guy that I like.
That's everyone's favorite beer league softball player, Ryan Noda. Go out there and get it,
Dude.
Um,
No, great for OBP.
so I noticed one of those guys where I've always the A's, the A's ownership does a lot of things wrong, but like the A's, always seem to be able to identify players, mostly because they have to. But one thing I wanted to note, especially with the A's, and to connect this with Brenton Doyle, is like, we say this a lot: playing time is king, right? And so the A's are going to let guys go. And once they'll give them the month or two to figure it out that a lot of teams wouldn't. Some players that we saw in the Twins, like I was talking about Matt Wallner as one of those guys before, but he's someone who had a great second half of the season in 23. This year he came out really, really cold, and they sent him back down in part because they had enough options to replace him with, and in part because they had thoughts about winning the division, and so they really couldn't take that. The A's don't have to worry about that at all. It's the same thing with the Rockies, and so again, Brenton Doyle was one of those guys that I looked at really early in the offseason and said, this guy's going to play every day, because they had started playing him because he was just a stud defensive center fielder, and the Rockies really, really needed that, and they didn't really have anyone else to fill that spot. And his biggest problem was contact and getting on base, but it certainly seemed like even if he hit 200, they were going to play him because he was going to be valuable to them. And even if he wasn't valuable to them, like what are the Rockies going to do? Like, so, and for a guy like that, a guy who's got a little bit of pop and who's got the speed, someone like Lawrence Butler, let's say, where maybe they're not going to, make contact as much as you'd like. Maybe they're going to be striking out more than 30% of the time, which is, for me, kind of that cutoff of whether or not they're going to be able to stay in the league or not. But like, he's going to be given that run, and it's that's one of the, as much as ability matters, kind of having that playing time and being in a position where you're going to get to play is huge. Yeah.
And I mean, you have to be in a good organization. Like honestly, like it's like what we're talking about here is playing time matters, but like it helps to take the next step. Is like you need the playing time, but you need good tools and assets around you, right? So it's one of the things I always worry about with the A's. Like, can Lawrence Butler take the next step to be a 25-25 guy next year? Can he be a 30-30 type guy? Does he have that potential while in Oakland? Or like, do you all of a sudden like move him because you're the Oakland A's and he hits leadoff for somebody else that's actually really good? Like, does he fill a hole for the Toronto Blue Jays? Right? Like, do they bring people in to support Vlad Guerrero, who still hits 341 even though everyone around him sucks, right? Like what actually, like what happens with these kind of things? Because a guy like Schumann, a guy like Butler, and another guy I'm going to eventually talk about is a Red Sox player, but like these are the type of guys that I like to come into the next step and take that step because they have that attitude and panache to actually get there. And so, yeah.
I like it.
Yep.
All right. Let me find Schumann's Fangraphs. I just want to see what his what his contact look like. So this is a window into how at least I tend to look at stuff, and this is kind of the most important thing for me is looking at the barrel rate and hard hit percentage. Those, if a guy isn't able to do that, it's going to be hard. There's very few cases where someone can not hit the ball very hard and be successful in the league. And there are a few. I mean, and Stephen Kwan is one of them where he gets the most out of what he does put on the ball, and the same, the guys that are super pull heavy, the Marcus Semien and Isaac Paredes, like those guys, their profiles typically wouldn't look, it looks like they shouldn't be as good as they are. But someone that is, if you're barreling the ball over 10% of the time, if your hard hit percentage is close to 50%, like that's always a good sign. And this is what I would expect for Schumann. 6% barrel rate, 37% hard hit rate. That's not terrible, and the one thing that I hate is that it's not easy to get splits on these, but that's a thing that if you can dig into the data, it's good to see, over the course of the season, was he getting better at that? Is his barrel rate 5% because he didn't have his first barrel until June, so stuff like that.
Yep.
All right. We got another one.
Yeah. I mean, I just kind of trashed on the Red Sox before, like St. Clay Holmes, but Ceddanne Rafaela is such a fun player, man. He was one of the first rewards I had this year, and I kept him and I used him quite a bit. And I just like the way he plays ball. He has that swagger. Like, you watch him play against the Yankees and like you realize he has that it factor that not a lot of guys have. He's not a passive player. He's a guy that's going to go out there and do it. I don't know what his splits look like, but I just watch him play ball and I just really enjoyed it. He was one of the guys that when a Red Sox game came on, I wanted to watch him hit the ball. And that's very rare for me to say. So because he was often at the bottom of the lineup. Many times he was at the bottom of the lineup and he would hit and then he'd lead right into, Jaron Duran. And then all of a sudden Tyler O'Neill would come up and like that team actually was kind of fun to watch when as a Yankees fan, you realize they're not going to be competitive. So you don't really care. It's like you can actually enjoy the good players on the team. So he's another fun guy. I like these guys. I like speed, obviously. I like the ability to get stolen bases.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. And so he's someone that I always kind of looked at as a glove first guy. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, does it sound like the plan with him is middle infield or?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like the plan for
DJ Local. You got this. I feel like he's typically the one that's on it. DJ Local's in the chat. What's up? We got Taco Slayer. Robbie's here. But yeah, no.
I mean, the plan that I think for all Boston Red Sox players is to go to the pub and get drunk with all your Irish friends. Like that's kind of what I think the plan is. So if that means running really fast, then good for him. But I don't know.
But yeah, no. I mean, I know one of the big questions I had, like with my late round drafts for like NFBC guys when I was looking for outfielders, was Rafaela and Abreu. I feel like was there one more? Who was the other one? But I mean, looking at those guys and trying to figure out which of them was maybe going to get both the playing time and and all of that. But right now it looks like the door is going to be open with Tyler O'Neill gone, and they're mostly DHing Yoshida now. So it's going to be Duran, and I would guess Abreu, at least against righties for sure.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it looks like he could be anywhere. It looks like there's going to be playing time there, which is great.
And I'm glad you brought up Abreu, because Abreu is a fun guy to have on your team there too.
Right?
You know?
I like his numbers and looks like what he can do.
Yep. Yep.
Let's take a look at him. So he not
Young
bad.
kid.
Ended up with almost 500 plate appearances, 15 home runs, 8 stolen bases, and this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the stats I like to see from guys that you maybe wouldn't expect. A 10% barrel rate, 49.8% hard hit rate, like that'll play.
Yep.
And again, they were platooning him a lot. So like if he ends up in an everyday role, it might be something where his production, his overall production dips a little bit. But again, for our purposes, if I'm playing Wilyer Abreu, it's going to be because he's at home against some bad right-handed pitching. And in those cases, you're going to get the best of him. And that's when a guy like that can put up a 60 or 70 and seemingly come out of nowhere. But, it's something where you can kind of see the opportunities there.
And that's a great shout. I mean, we can't say it enough. Like, you've heard us talk about a couple guys now. Abreu here, Rafaela, obviously. Home field advantage for these guys makes a really, really big difference. Like, that's one of the reasons that Bretton Doyle was so great. Like, you play in Colorado all the time, you have more opportunity at this stuff. And so, like, I'm focusing on these guys that are in great ballparks to hit. I mean, that like little league fence, the big monster that's there, like it's like typical fly balls just bounce off the wall for a single or a double. And so there's a lot of things going for it. And with the pesky pull down right field line, like there's a lot of things that can happen to your advantage there. And like that's why there are some areas and stadiums that I really focus on. And obviously Great American Small Park in Cincinnati. I love AmFam Field in Milwaukee, and there's another guy that I like in Milwaukee that we'll talk about here in this. But like these are the kind of like things that I'm also taking into account when it comes down to who I'm going to look at next year, who could potentially break out.
Nice, I like it. All right, so who did you say you've got someone on the Brewers?
Yeah, Joey Ortiz.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, he was on my list too. I like Joey Ortiz.
Yep, just like him. I mean, he came in, he filled the hole at third base, and he was the big piece of that Corbin Burnes trade. I think that we had like 11 home runs or something like that this year. Like, didn't have blowing you out of the water type of numbers, but 101 OPS, 25 doubles, six triples, 60 RBI, 11 steals, and 142 games. Right? Like, we're gonna take that. And he's like strong defensive player. 7 DRS, defensive run saved. So at the hot corner at third base, like he's expected to slide over to shortstop in the future if Adames actually like leaves in free agency, which again just gives him more range of what you can actually use him for and where you can go. And I mean, when it comes down to it, like we're talking about, that's a little harder spot to fill because when you're playing Sorare, you're looking at your corner infielders, you're looking for stud smashers. They can hit your home runs. And so is Ortiz in there? Nah, probably not, right? But you need to be able to maximize. And so middle infield makes some more sense if you can get there into that kind of nook, because those guys, while they've been great this year, they're not always the easiest to find when it comes down to it. And I don't think that a year that we've seen this year from guys like Bobby Witt and Francisco Lindor, who are both going to finish second in MVP voting, really is a fair representation of what the middle infield position actually does.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how much more offense there is at the shortstop position now than in years past. Let's see. Other Brewers. Any thoughts on Bryce Terang, Garrett Mitchell? I mean, those are the two that kind of popped to mind for me.
Garrett Mitchell spent most of the year hurt this year,
and most of last year too.
We have to see. He's not a guy that I've ever felt comfortable putting out there. When he has 4 games, at Colorado, he is not a guy that I'm still going to put into my teams. I'm just not going to. Terang, I mean, he had 50 stolen bases this year. So it's, again, he's the type of guy that I like to watch play baseball, but you need, in a lot of instances, you need doubles and triples and home runs to really round out a guy's whole entire span. So Terang is a little bit of a harder choice. And if I have a choice between Rice Terang or Ali De La Cruz or Francisco Lindor or even Anthony Volpe. Like, I'm going to put him on the same par with Anthony Volpe. I'm probably going to take Terang a lot more than Anthony Volpe when it comes right down to it, but I will consider them at similar levels. But I think Terang has much more upside with the stolen base and the Brewers' willingness to let him run. So
right. Yeah. Although, I mean, I think Volpe, I mean, it may have just been like kind of wearing down the long season and all of that. I mean, he slumped the second half. He's pretty terrible. But I think, I don't know that that's, kind of his true talent level. I think he very well could play better next year. But also, I mean, the difference for me is like he's always going to cost more than Bryce Terang. The one question I'd have with Terang is that playing time question, though. I think because he's a good fantasy player, not necessarily like you said. I mean, if he can't hit more than singles, it's easy to replace that guy in the lineup. So it's someone where I was just looking at Joey Ortiz's prices. Like, if you can get Joey Ortiz for $2, like that's a great pickup. I wouldn't necessarily do that with Bryce Terang just because I would want to know that he's got consistent playing time going into the season if I'm going to play him. But then another similar guy that Robbie mentioned was Xavier Edwards, and that the Marlins are also one of those teams that that are going to be giving guys playing time. And so Xavier Edwards kind of came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden he was leading off, stealing bases, and hitting the ball. And so that's an interesting one as well. I just want to run back through the comments. Again, thanks everyone who's here and watching or listening. DJ Local had mentioned Duran. I'm assuming Jarren Duran, and when we were talking about kind of the guys that took a step, and he's top 10. Jarren Duran, he's for sure one of those guys that took a leap, and someone that he's probably someone that you can look at the prices for him and see, just the difference in opinion from last year to this year. But looking at his price this time last year was this is just February. There not many. Okay, I was going to say there had to have been cards for him. Yeah, but I mean, he was, a $5 or $10 card, and he put up the season. I think that, and again, when I talk about post-hype sleepers, it's guys that were hyped up, like this guy's a top prospect and he's going to be the next big thing, and then didn't live up to that, and that happens for 1,000 different reasons. Sometimes it's just normal adjustment. The guys that we've seen come up take 2 to 3 months to adjust, and then are just like major league players as like 20 or 21 or 22-year-olds, is super short. The Bobby Witt, Adley Rutschman, Chiriot this year, even like O'Neill Cruz and Ellie De La Cruz, I think the more struggles. And again, those are guys more, I think, fantasy wise, they came in and were instantly huge fantasy producers. But, with the strikeouts and all of that, or, platoon splits, more questions, about kind of their long-term fit. But yeah, guys like that, it's pretty rare. Most guys are going to go, especially if they're coming up before, their age 25 season, they're probably going to struggle. They're probably going to be seeing the best pitching they've ever seen in their lives. And they need to adjust to it. They're going to be pitch you different, and they've got major league advanced scouts scouting them now who are saying, "Oh, here's the holes in his swing. Pound him, with fastballs up and in, and you can't do anything with it." And they need to make that adjustment. And again, the super talented players are going to figure it out quickly, but others are going to struggle. I mean, Jarren Duran is a guy who, I mean, the picture in my head of him is him just wandering around in the outfield because he missed a ball and didn't even go after it. And I think it happened twice in a week. It was just terrible. But it's not a good look for sure. But he's able to come back from that and produce. But I mean, he's always someone that had some pop and had some speed. Pretty good defender when he's trying, and all of that. So yeah. But yeah, we Bob definitely kind of wants to focus on some of the smaller guys, but I think we'll also take a look at some of those guys that might take a kind of average to kind of star leap as well. And Robbie's got a couple of those. James Wood, Caminero on the Rays, Junior Caminero. Those are two guys that James Wood is one that he last year in the minors he put up huge numbers. He's just like O'Neill Cruz and Ellie De La Cruz. He's just a big guy with super athletic, and so he was someone that I had. So my strategy generally going forward, and I think if I was starting from scratch, this is what I would recommend people as well, no matter what level you're doing. But like for me, my strategy this year was picking a few teams that I wanted to build collections for, because the collections are kind of fun. Obviously they want to incentivize them, and so the Nats were a team that I started building a collection for this year because I knew James Wood was coming. Dylan Cruz is another top prospect there who did get called up. CJ Abrams is a guy that I really like, and he at this point is probably going to be one of those post-hype sleepers because the Nats, there's the picture of him in the casino in Chicago at like 7 a.m. Before a day game, and the Nats sent him down, even though he's ostensibly one of their building blocks. But he's a guy who's, again, speed and power. He can easily put up a 2020 season. Garcia, their second baseman, again, a great platoon guy. So that's a fun team. So I think that's the spirit of that, I think, is looking towards next year, what guys are going to be cheap, what teams might be good to, if not, start picking up those players in the offseason this year. Because like I said, there's guys, Duran you could pick up. Joey Ortiz is $2. He'll probably be playable next year. And then, even these studs like Caminero and James Wood, those are guys that you can build around. And so the Rays might be a team going into next year. And again, maybe it's something where you pick that as a collection you're going to build. Junior Caminero, Jonathan Aranda, I think had a pretty decent end to the season. And the Rays are always going to have guys that can come up and surprise. So yeah, I think that's part of kind of what we're looking at. Just to get back to a couple of the other comments. DJ Loke early on, it said Ober is a sneaky Cy Young guy next year. Yeah, I'm a Twins fan. I thought the biggest thing with Ober was going to be his health, and he's put up 2 healthy seasons so far, which is great. But he's got the ability. I didn't realize how good he'd been this year. Again, I'm not necessarily checking his season long stats. I'm like watching the games, and I'm playing him when he's got a good matchup. But he had like a 0.99 whip. It's just crazy how well he did. So yeah, he's someone that and again, I think he has the ability to repeat that again. Health is more the question, I think, with him. And I think that's all I've got for the comments right now. All right, Bob, we talked a little bit about nationals, not guys for next year so much as James Wood. Talked a little bit about Junior Caminero and Jonathan Aranda. Is there anyone else on the Rays that you been looking at or like?
I have not watched the Rays play a baseball game since Randy Rosarena left.
I figured that was probably the case. Let me see if I had anyone else on my Rays. No, it was just those two. Let's see. Another one. Do you have any Royals?
As far as rookies go, I mean, I don't even know if they're rookies. I like the team in general. Is kind of how I look at things. There's Miguel Garcia. I know he's not a rookie, but he had periods at the start of the year where he was usable every single week, every week. And like he was a guy that I always like Pasquatch and Bobby Witt. But as far as guys that like really don't know much about, not really. I'm not a like Michael Massey kind of guy, although he was hitting leadoff coming into the playoffs and stuff like that. But he's not guy that I'm expecting a ton out of. I thought that the Royals in general really overperformed. They were the back of an excellent pitching staff with Louisville and Reagan's pitching out of their mind. I mean, I think that the main guy you want to look at as a quiet, sneaky kind of guy, and I talked about him with you many, many times this year, Kev, is Lucas Erceg. I mean, I think he's a quality top end closer that not a lot of people give a lot of benefit or credit to. So he's the kind of guy that I'm looking for if I'm going to add in a sneaky kind of way from the Royals.
Nice. Nick Lofton was one that I thought if he came up and got playing time, so I'm not sure what his kind of prospect background is. Let's see where he was ranked. Oh, he was a top 4 prospect in the organization. 40 plus future value is not great, but yeah, he's one that I had looked at, and he is kind of a multi-position guy. I think they played him a little bit across the diamond, but that's one of those guys that might have a spot next year. But Michael Garcia is a really good one. Another one of those post hype guys where he started off huge. He's someone who had good batted ball stats, but it wasn't coming together necessarily. Kind of like Vlad when Vlad is sucking. He's hitting the ball hard, but he's hitting it into the ground. Yeah. And Brian Hayes the same way, where it's like you just need to get the launch angle up a little, and who knows if that's going to happen or not. But Garcia's got the tools to put it together, and he was pretty brutal for most of the season after his start. But he's another guy that certainly has potential. And again, I think, I don't want to waste too much time kind of digging into prices and all of that, but like a lot of these guys, these are the guys when I'm scouting in the off season that I'm looking at, and Bob and I are going through our favorite guys, and in part that's colored by the teams we like to watch. Bob doesn't like the Rays. He loves the A's. And so he's going to be more familiar with those. And so, it's a similar thing for me. There's teams I like, there's teams I don't, teams I follow closely and teams I don't. But Fangraphs, the site that's up right now, they do a ton of work on prospects. And so that, whenever a new season is starting, that's usually where I'll start to figure out the guys I don't know. To see, to scan through the list of guys that might get called up this year and see, who they are and kind of learn at least a little bit. Fangraphs does a really good job of kind of giving you as much detail as you want. Usually there's like a 1 or 2 sentence blurb, on the player page. And then usually there's, the list that I pulled up is, they usually do an organizational top prospects where they'll go in depth on those guys. Let's see if we can do a quick one for Lofton just to show you what that looks like.
And so you said about teams, Kev, we obviously follow the teams that we like. So that's why I'm mentioning A's, I'm mentioning Brewers, but we also see a lot of their in division competition as well. So as a Yankees fan, like this is why I'm talking about Rafaela, right? This is why I'm talking about the Red Sox. I mean, I think that when you look at it, if you look at a team for guys that can really break out next year, the team that I'm keeping like my eye on this year is Baltimore Orioles. I think that there is so much young talent on that team, Kev, that after you look through Lofton, we can actually look at those guys that can take that step next to the Orioles. And I think that it's a decent way of doing some scouting, actually. Like, what division, what teams you like, more about those guys intrinsically because you just tend to see them a lot when it comes right down to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and so again, this is just kind of the 2-paragraph breakdown that they've got for Lofton. You're more than welcome to go check that stuff out. Colton Cowser is one of those young guys on the Orioles. One who, so I had picked up Jordan Westberg early in the season, and he started out pretty hot. He was kind of one of the guys that I focused on. For the Orioles, because they have so many good players, this is always I've been stacking Orioles since I first started playing, and even then it was Adley, Cedric Mullins, Ryan Mountcastle, and if there was anyone else there, it became harder and harder to start squeezing those guys in. So it became the question of, all right, well, Gunnar Henderson's here now, like where do you fit him in? Am I putting him at third base, like at CI? That makes the most sense. I think Mountcastle was probably the least of those 3 that I was already playing. But it's one of those things with these Orioles where they might have 8, 9 guys that you can that are legitimate starts some weeks, because Cowser is someone who, if you had asked me how many home runs he had hit this season, I would not have been close to 24. But so he put up a 24-9 season, and about, I also didn't realize he played that much. I thought he was getting a little bit less playing time than that, even though he was pretty sure he was up almost the entire season and didn't miss too much time with injury. But yeah,
these are and like you said, kind of like this is the biggest problem with the Orioles. Like Gunnar is going to start. Santander is going to start. Like we're going to get the main guys.
Santander is going to be gone, I think. I'm not sure what's going to happen there, but yeah.
It gives guys like Ryan O'Hearn time to blow up, like in the middle of the season. Like, who's got Ryan O'Hearn? But like, we're talking about Colton Cowser here. We're talking about Jackson Holiday, right? We're talking about Jordan Westberg. We're talking about Heston Kjerstad. Like, these guys are excellent ball players. And if they're given the opportunity, like Cap says, like they can make an impact. Like, this is the difference between knowing that the Orioles have all of these studs versus knowing that the A's suck and all these guys would start for the A's. Like that, right. There's a big difference that we're really talking about here. We're guaranteed playing time with Lawrence Butler, who quite honestly might not make the field for the Baltimore Orioles, right?
Right.
But he has to play out of necessity, right? And so now a guy like Jackson Holiday is going to rotate. A guy like Kjerstad is going to like all of these guys are not going to get as much consistent PT as you might think. And so it's something you have to take into account. So I know that when we're on Discord, we talk about, do we expect him to play all 4 of the games? And in many cases, we don't. It's like, why isn't like Will Smith from the Dodgers in our 4-game week going to be projected higher? It's because he sits for 2 of those games typically. Like, those are the things that we know as a community when we have these conversations. And the same thing comes back with the Orioles. Like, sometimes you have a glut of talent, you have nowhere to put it, and so is it better to be the best player? Is it better to be like the 3rd rated prospect on one of the best prospect laden teams with the best players? Or is it better to be in the 5th best prospect, but on a team that is absolutely horrible and they have to play you? And many people will say game time is what actually matters and determines who's going to be what, and you can't hope for a move for these guys or a trade from these guys, because a team like the Orioles are actually good with their resources. Like, they're not about to go out and just ship everybody off like the old days. So there is a mix of what's going on here.
Yeah, it's and I think that plays a big role in figuring out the kind of whens and whys you might want to pick up a player, because that's one of the, I think, maybe more difficult parts of playing this game, at least as cheaply as possible, which is, I like Jackson Holiday or I like Colton Cowser. When those cards are released, they're always going to be too expensive. It's almost never a good idea to buy the rookies early. Torrio is and if it's a guy that you feel really good about and you're going to hold, I think I will typically, but my plan is usually, well, I'm going to buy 6 of them and I'll buy one, at the price now. And if he goes down, I'm going to buy another. And if he goes down some more, I'm going to buy more. And if he goes up later, I'll sell a couple of those. I've got enough where, if I want to play him in 4 lineups, I'm able to. But also if, his price spikes, I can do that. And so, that's how I do it. That's not always the best way. And so, that's a place where having that understanding of, the Orioles, because they want to contend next year, because they've got so many options, they're going to have a short leash on these guys where, if Kjerstad comes out and struggles early in the season, he's going to go back down to AAA till he can figure out what and this is a good thing with the Orioles, but they've got a great developmental, they're a great developmental organization. So I think they're not just sending a guy down and saying, you sucked, and so now you don't get to play up here anymore. They're saying, like, look, X, Y, and Z are the things that we were struggling with. Fix these down there, and you'll be back up. And so, but again, that's the thing where if you're like, I love Colton Cowser, I think he's going to be, a top 30 player for the next 10 years. That doesn't mean you should buy him, at any specific time. And so if he comes up and he's mashing, like, he's going to be too expensive, and that's the type of thing where I would wait. But right now, like a lot of guys in the off season, he's below $10. And if this is a guy that you like, or I mean, I just bought one for $5. That's one of those where, yeah, I mean, if he's $5, I'm going to pick one up. And he's someone who, if he plays to his potential next year, that's easily a $10 or $15 or $20 card. Even if not for the whole season, for a period. And that's the other thing. And that's, right now I'm probably on, rare wise at least, the hottest streak of Sorare of my life, staying in the top 1 or 2 in both rare competitions. But last season, 23, I started off the first month really, really hot, like podiums almost every other week, and sometimes multiples. And that was in part because at the beginning of the offseason, had gone in and I said, all right, I'm going to look at the first month's schedule, because I know, having gone through, the end of the 22 season, just how volatile prices are in terms of responding to good matchups and responding to good performances. And so I wanted to see, all right, where are the matchups I want to target this first month of the season, who's at those stadiums that are easy to hit in, who is playing a team with bad pitching, who is going to a place where they've historically had success. I don't know how good of a statistical predictor of future performance that necessarily is, but I at least feel like if someone has had success at a place, they're going to go into it with a better mindset than if they've sucked at that place. And so, yeah, so I mean, I know last year it was targeting Mets because I think they had matchups with the Nationals, and I think maybe the Marlins, one other team that looked like their rotation wasn't going to be great. But picking those guys up, and then also figuring out, all right, I'm going to sell these guys early because they're going to spike and probably get more of them back later. And so that was the off-season plan going into 23. Last year it was more just buy whatever card seemed cheap. But yeah, no, I think I think those are all important things to remember as part of this process of, you can get everything right with a guy, but if you're buying him at the wrong time, it doesn't necessarily help. But
so, kind of on that note, with your penchant to buy a lot of these guys, like if they're getting lower and lower, at least keep buying the good players, and you said you have 4, 5, 6 Colton Cowsers. Like, are you doing like a dollar cost average before you decide to sell on like a big week where the Orioles have 4 games in Colorado where his price is going to spike? Are you doing like that sort of like dollar cost average to make sure that you get a little bit back, like enough?
Yeah.
What you're at?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so it's the fact that I'm playing both, the game and the market game. And so I just don't want to be in a position where the time that market wise, it's time to sell this guy, but game wise, I want to play this guy. And so that way, I think, when I've seen it talked about in investing, it's called trading around a core position. And so for the guys that I really like, I'm just going to keep a couple of their cards for always. And then, but other than that, if it's something where their price is too high, I'll only have those 2. And if it's something where their price is low, I'll keep buying until I feel like there's no chance, the price will ever go up again. But yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, to some extent, I don't think it's as much of a, clear strategy as, specifically dollar cost averaging. I'm not going in saying, well, I'd really like my Colton Cowsers to have an average price of $5 or something, but it's just something where, well, I think he's easily someone that's going to be an X dollar player, and that's going to change a lot. I think that's the hard thing. I mean, for me right now, I love doing this. I love talking baseball with you. This is great. But with that has come, I'm spending less time, following the market for sure. And in part that's also because I just don't need cards. I feel terrible when people are talking about trading with me. I'm like, I mean, I'll take some cards. I'm happy to figure something out if you need to get a guy for a lineup or whatever. But I'm not going to overpay for Kodai Senga. I don't need him. He's someone that, it'd be great to add him to my collection. But the fact that the floor is $50 right now means nothing to me. It's not a $50 card for me. So there's that aspect of it. But I just wanted to note that I think I think there's going to be some changes in, kind of what those prices are. I think generally in the off season, I would have said last year, if you can get a stud SP, anyone like a top 20-ish starting pitcher, Corbin Burns, Pablo Lopez, Luis Castillo, Tyler Glasnow, Garrett Cole, any of those really, really good guys. They're under $10 for a limited. I would say buy them. That was kind of typically where I would go. I'm not certain that's right anymore. So I think that kind of baseline price of, for a stud hitter being, somewhere between $50 and $100. I think that's changing, both because of the classic in-season split and also just because there's more cards out there and all of that. And I think there's going to be a little bit more fluctuation in that stuff. So I think my thresholds, I think, are going to change this off season. I think it's going to be more if there's, Justin Steele is a guy that I was just buying. I bought, a couple of his limiteds, I think, for like $2 or $2.50. But he's someone that I think can be a top tier starter. I think he's one of those guys that has his arsenal is more deceptive than it seems. I think he does a lot of different stuff with his fastball, and that seems to be something that's playing up right now that hitters are struggling with. And so, as long as he's healthy, I think he's a top. I think he's a top starting pitcher. And so, if he's 250, yeah. On the other hand, going into last year, last year if he was $2, I would have bought him, but I don't. So it's all kind of changing and all of that. But in a lot of cases, it's feel, and in part that's from following the market, which I'm doing less of now. So that feel's going to get worse, unfortunately. But that is something that. The last note I wanted to make was the way that I typically followed the market without spending all of my time on Sorare was using Sorare Data's price alerts. And so that is no longer something you can do for free. I think you only get 20 now with their free plan, but that's also something that we'll be implementing. I'm not sure that it's going to be ready for the off season for you, but I think going into, next year's kind of app plan, we're definitely going to have that stuff incorporated into it, so you can do that there, and that makes it a lot easier to see. All right, this guy's price is coming down. I'm getting alerts, every couple of days for his cards. I'm going from there. All right.
Yep. Yeah, I really struggle, Kev, to hold on to players and then move them out at the right time. Like, I've been fortunate enough where I've had opportunities to move guys like Gunnar and Bobby Witt and Shohei, but those are the rare occasions. And I think it's tough on my end because my strategy essentially said doing the exact opposite of what Kevin said and spend as much money as humanly possible and overpay for everything at the beginning with the idea that you can win it all back through the course of the year. And luckily, fortunately enough, with my knowledge of baseball and with the resources that SorareFP have allowed, I've been able to do that, right? But my strategy doesn't really work along that. So now it's like when you win these extra guys and you come through, it's just like, should I turn around and sell them? And I'm in this area right now where I've already sold a couple Shoheis, but I still have a couple left, right? I want to sell him because it makes most sense. Like, this is the highest he's going to go at this point for this card, but I'm also an extraordinarily greedy person and I want to win, right? So it's just like, where do we go? Like, what are we doing here, right? And at the end of the day, if I'm able to win a top 10, limited pro star postseason card, like having a postseason version of Judge or Shohei or Betts would be absolutely wild, right? Like, where is the balance? And I know that yours is different, and this is what I struggle with the most because, like you, I don't follow the market enough. I don't pay enough attention because I splurged all of my money at the beginning, basically, and I use my winnings to essentially continue to fund everything through. And so, I realized going into the playoffs, I thought I was going to be all set. And then all of a sudden I realized I never was a big fan of the Guardians or the Tigers or the Mets. And I was like, oh crap, I actually don't have a lot of players from these teams. What am I doing now? And what's crazy enough is I have all these Yankees. I didn't buy a Garrett Cole until last week. Yeah, it's just and it's a different kind of strategy like when you come through it. And I really like listening to how you talk about your way of you going through it, because I think that for someone like me, I don't know the reality of being able to sell a lot of my cards, or even like should I do it when I look at my overall like XP that I built up. And I think a lot of people in chat here and a lot of people in SorareFP are in a very similar kind of position where they've had these cards all year, they built them up. Is it really worth selling? And I think it's a really tough part.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think Sorare's focus on collections is something that helps because there's at least some benefit for it, and I'm happy that they're doing that and they're going in that direction. I do want to say thank you to Damien, who reached out to me a couple days ago. I messaged him, I don't know, probably a couple weeks ago, and said, hey, you know, it was something, but wanted to chat with him about something. But he's like, you know, I just wanted to let you know I didn't forget about you. Just, you know, NBA launch is coming up and all of that, and so all of that. But yeah, no, it's good to see that they're at least kind of staying aware that we're here. I think probably a year ago this time there was maybe more questions about how much how much time was being put into MLB and actually thinking about it. But I do think those pieces are starting to come together now, and so the collection game encourages you to keep those pieces where it's just. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing for me. And like I think I said on one of the last streams, like I might give away some of my collections just so I can start a new one again. I think, you know, if even with the loss from the transfer, you know, someone can get a 5% collection, I think it'd be kind of fun to give one of those away and then build a new one. But yeah, it's not worth it to get rid of a collection because you've got that bonus, because you spent some time doing it, and there's just enough attachment to it where it's like, oh, well, like why even get rid of it? That said, you know, some people, you know, and I think I've certainly been accused of this at times, but even I'm keeping cards, but like, you know, some people just don't have any emotional attachment to it whatsoever. And just sell off their cards. And I think that's the fine way. I mean, you know, I always say this, but like there's 1,000 different ways to play this game. I think that's great. And I think, you know, the fact that Bob and I are both able to win pretty consistently, but also take wholly different approaches. And I think that's fine. It's part of this is, you know, knowing yourself, knowing what you want to do and what you're going to get out of it. But, you know, for sure, for me, you know, for me, I would just, you know, it's because of the family I was raised in who were, you know, my dad was raised by like Italian immigrants. And so it's like, you would never spend more money on something than you have to. Like you just, like, it's just such a foreign concept where it's like, but also like, is it going to take more time for me to like find the best possible deal on this card? If I spend an hour, you know, trying to negotiate, you know, a card for $5 that I could have just bought for $10, is that worth it? Like, is $5 for an hour of time? You know, and a lot of this stuff, again, this is a hobby. This is fun. And so like, if you're having fun with it, if you enjoy trading cards, then that's cool. But if it's like on a straight dollar for dollar, you know, scale, like you should just buy the $10 card. And I think and I think Bob, I am so happy that Bob has come back to MLB. I'm so glad that he got into limited. And that's, you know, that's all I've said for a while was the angry whales that were like, this is stupid and everything sucks. And it's mostly because their tiers suck and the rewards sucked. And so people playing it super rare and unique thought the games sucked. And they weren't getting out of it what they should have, you know, but, you know, Bob, thankfully, you know, was like, oh, I'm going to try limited again. And here he is. And it's great to have Bob back on the MLB side. Because, yeah, it's, you know, it's fun for him now. And he knows, like, I can spend this money and not care. Like, I know what my budget is. I can, you know, set aside X amount of dollars and I can just blow it. And if I, you know, pay $100 for a card that sells for $40 in a month, it doesn't matter. Like so I think that's a good thing. And again, if you want to play that way, you can. And if you don't want to play that way, you don't have to. And so you do, you know, the time that you put into the game is going to change, you know, including the part of the season. Like Bob doesn't need to do anything this off season. Whereas typically the way I play, I'm like, this is my time. Like I need to figure out, you know, which players I like going into next year and figure out how much I think they're going to sell for next year. And then, you know, kind of figure out doing that. And again, you know, I've talked about this a few times, but for me, that's the most important thing as far as if you want to build a gallery in the off season is make tier lists. make lists of these players, and that's something that Bob and I are going to be doing, and we'll be sharing with the FP community in the Discord as we go about. Part of that is projections, and so seeing what numbers people are projected for, but also just kind of a more field-based tiers of like, these are the guys that I think could put up a huge game week in the right situation, and part of that's going to be home field, like someone like Brenton Doyle, who if he was on the Tigers, I don't know if he would be as good of a play. If he was on the the Rays or something like that, it's maybe he gets playing time, but maybe the park isn't as good, things like that. So figuring that stuff out, and then just keeping an eye enough on the market to say, all right, this guy has dropped down below a price where I want to start picking up more of him. And so that's not something that the way Bob is playing would make sense. It doesn't make sense for him to track the market in the offseason. He's going to buy some new season cards and play champ next year, and it's going to be great.
And keep in mind, guys, like my strategy, it works because I wasn't ever going to sell out. Like Kevin said, like I understood what my budget was and what money I needed to help push myself forward and what I needed in my real life too. So this was what I had to work with within the confines that I had. So I never felt the need to sell these pieces because I didn't have mortgage payments or kids to put through school. So like these things do matter when I was doing my math of like how I did this. And one thing I want to say is I've been going back and forth about should I sell and try to like build up a little bit of a bankroll because I'm clearly going to buy back in like I did last year with this stuff. And what I'm coming to realize is that tomorrow will actually help dictate a lot of what I want to do. And what happens tomorrow is that the NBA releases, and the NBA has their daily game. And I think that knowing Sorare, they're testing their daily game in NBA. They have their rivals game in football side, soccer side. They're going to do something with baseball. And so the worst case scenario, as I look at it, maybe I have all these cards in my Shohei Ohtani's and Aaron Judges and stuff like that are now classic season cards. I'll keep playing them in classic, but I can also use them in my daily game or whatever the MLB side of it is going to be, so I can get those essences, so I can actually build up and I can rip a T1. And like what I'm going to try to figure out is if you're good at this, is that going to be a feasible thing to do? Just keep saving up and keep ripping like stars and like selling those stars and going through. And like this is actually a new form of the game. So I'm actually really excited to see how this works in NBA. I always say every year that I'm not going to buy into NBA, and then I end up doing it. But the actual daily game of it actually brings a whole different aspect to this. And so like I'm actually leaning more towards not even doing anything with my cars, just like sitting and holding them and then just like working through and seeing what the new fun game they bring out for MLB is, because it's going to change functionally what we do on the market and then what we actually do and how we generate cards and work and rewards for ourselves when we get there. So I am very leery about making any big sweeping changes to my gallery before I know more. And so that's something that Kevin and I are going to be talking about a lot as we go through the summer, because I'm going to dig deep into the common side of daily basketball, because I don't know that I have the time always to get in there. But for baseball, because we're always talking on Discord, because we have projections, we have all of these things out there, they're actually tools for us. And that can be something, Kevin, we can talk to Captain No Sweat about. Like, is it even feasible to have based on what the new game that MLB puts out, like shorter time frames for projections, like even like daily kind of projection sort of things like that. So, just something out there. Like obviously we're not promising anything, but we have to see what MLB comes up for us next year, because I think that this year has been a big success. And I think that game will put a big shift into what we can and can't do moving forward. And I want to have the tools and resources to be able to win more, because my whole purpose of this is win more, sell the duplicate cards you have, keep buying, keep winning. Like it's fun, it's exciting, it is the best fantasy baseball game you can play. And this is also good scouting and stuff like that Kevin and I talk about all the time for like your big year-long fantasy leagues that we're going to start talking about once the actual postseason is over.
Yeah, looking forward to it. That's one thing also to keep in mind. And I think the assumption is, we'll probably see some sort of daily game next year. If that's the case, I I think you see starting pitchers become a little bit more in demand, just because the same way that you need a lot to be able to do it every game week. If you're looking at every day, that's something. So I think if I was looking to build on a budget this offseason, I would probably look at, like I said, Justin Seal for $2. I think that's a good example of, if I can get a guy that I would be comfortable starting in a good matchup for $1 or $2, I would start loading up on those guys. Get as much variety as you can. If you're someone that thinks you're going to want to play the daily game next year, and that's something that, like Bob said, that we're going to have a good hint of what it's going to look like from the NBA season. So we'll be able to see it, if it looks worthwhile or not, and all of that. So yeah, it's something to look forward to. All right, I see it's 2-2 on Lindor right now. So the game is starting. I don't know. Bob, do you need to go? Do you want to talk for a little bit longer? Or do you want to jump off and watch the game?
I'm good talking. I mean, like, the last thing I want to do is go back to work. So
well, that sounds good. All right. So are there other players or teams you wanted to check in on?
I mean, we haven't really even talked about the guys like Jackson Merrill and those guys, but those are guys that you need to actually think about when it comes to rookies. Like, we haven't talked about guys like Luis Gil for the Yankees, who has had a great year this year. Great year. He's scheduled to pitch game 4, this coming up here in the playoff series. And that's a guy that I'm actually looking at for the next phase in the next week of competition, because one of the unique things about what's happening now in the baseball game that we're playing in SoRare, is that we have these two-game bracket for the first 2. And then, because it's a 7-game series at this point, we have no idea how long it's going to go. So basically, you need to gamble on which series is going to go the longest and load up with those in the next week. And so this is a really tough thing to figure out, because all of a sudden, if you think the Dodgers are going to sweep and you're going to get 2 games from the Dodgers, but the Yankees and the Cleveland Guardians are going to go 6 games, it doesn't make sense to play Shohei and Mookie Betts all of a sudden. And
Lindor just homered.
Is amazing. I put my captain pick on Lindor. I love it.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, he's so hot right now. I think he's just an automatic start. Yeah.
He's so hot right now. He's like Hansel from the movie Zoolander. People that follow this stuff.
So, he'll be on our next hot old guys special.
Hot old guys. Oh man. Yeah. Led by Jamie Moyer.
Nice.
So, but no, Lindor, I actually put the captain on him for both of my lineups. And again, Lindor is one of those guys that's, he started off the season so poorly. I remember talking to Robbie. He's like absolute garbage dumpster fire at this point. And look what happens, guys. Just a little bit of patience. Lindor figured it out. He's going to finish second in MVP voting, and he has been smashing. And this is what I was talking about at the beginning. Dodgers absolutely dominated yesterday, but Lindor leading off with a home run changes what this game looks like. Because now it's a bullpen game. It's been a bullpen game for the Dodgers, and Dodgers well, it is what it is. We could very easily go back, tied 1-1, and then all of a sudden, Shohei and Lindor are in for oh man, this might go 5. This game's at least going 5. It might go 6 or 7. All of a sudden, these things become a lot better. I would much rather, as a Yankees fan, I want them to win, be up 2-0 after this. For SoRare purposes, I want both series to be tied at 1-1, so that you just pick the guys that you like the best. And so it's going to come down to strategy. And these things are going to make and break who actually wins the overall chases, which is kind of wild when you think of it. You have to get lucky and pick the right tournaments, the right teams that are going to go with the deepest. So I'm excited. This is going to be fun. I mean, we have this week and then 2 more weeks after this. So the final week of the LCS and then the full World Series. So full World Series, you don't make any differences. You pick the best players, right?
Yep. But so the World Series is going to start Friday, October 25th.
Okay.
And so we've got, the lock is going to be Tuesday for this upcoming one.
Mm-hmm.
What do we got? 5:38 my time, so 7:38 Eastern. So it'll be, a pretty late lock on Tuesday. That's tomorrow's game. Wednesday, 6:08 for game 3. So Wednesday Wednesday evening, it'll be a lock for game week 58. And yeah, for those of you watching that do the projections, it'll be something similar, I think, where they'll probably be right after the game for game 2. But we might have at least a fair amount of the probable pitchers kind of for the rest of the week. So I'll see what we can do, but just I wouldn't maybe expect anything until Tuesday night or Wednesday morning. With the projections, the more we know about pitchers, the better the projections are going to be, because you're able to kind of play those matchups out, and so it makes a huge difference, as well as the playing time as well. If it's a lefty versus righty, or how long someone's predicted to go, means how many at bats Verdugo or David Fry or Will Brennan, guys like that are only going to get in against one side of the platoon or something like that. It makes a huge difference there.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of strategy, and I think that we're going to really have to talk about how we're going to line these things up. And I mean, I think that it's going to come down to your gut. I mean, that's what it usually always does. But it's just a matter of, I think this week is starting 3 relief pitchers, right? Like, that's actually, if at the end, like in the next week coming up, like that's actually a really feasible thing to do. Like, so does all of a sudden Luke Weaver's, starting pitcher card end up costing a lot more money? Is that a card worth buying to put into your starting pitcher rotation? And you know what? See what happens. It's a truly, and I think that when it comes down to the World Series, it's even more a function of what you do. If you have a reliever that is a starting pitcher, like short of you starting the 2 game 1 starters and hoping they get 3 games, like that's a very interesting kind of point to look there. So
yeah. What was a relievers? Oh no, the other thing I was going to say, and I did buy I think the Kopech starting pitcher card, but I mean, the other thing about the point we're at in the season right now is, to some degree, your choices are limited, right? There's just not much left. I don't have that many options, and at this point, so I think I did buy a Garrett Cole rare a couple weeks ago to prep for this. I bought Jose Ramirez on auction, so it was like $140 or something like that. But also, like, I'm in first with a huge lead for the chase. Like, if I can hold this, it's $8,500, so that kind of pays for itself. But even I'm like, I don't know, like I won an Ohtani, which is lucky but also great, and so that makes this easier. But like, I don't know that I would be looking at buying an Ohtani or a Judge if I didn't have one to try and maintain first. And it just depends on how it looks and how those matchups look. But I think that's part of the calculus too, is, do you want to put more money into it? In almost all cases, I would say no, it's not worth it to do it. But, something like this where maybe I buy $1,000 card, but if I think it's going to have a material effect on if I stay in first or not, that's something. But fingers crossed, I'll have a big enough lead, it won't even matter, and we'll be fine.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you, man. Like, I'm trying to win. Like, Kevin and I had this conversation the other day. I am so far out of the chase. Like, I didn't perform well in my chase teams, but I'm right up in like first or second for limited pro. So I think that like my focus is shifted to limited pro. Like, that's where I want to go, because like I said a little while ago, having the postseason cards are gorgeous. They're absolutely beautiful. And I would, if I'm fortunate enough to get a Shohei Ohtani or Mookie Betts or Freddie Freeman or Aaron Judge or Jose Ramirez or something like that, I will be ecstatic about it. Now, not so much Jose Ramirez, but yeah, like that would make me really happy. So it's like, it's one of these things that, like, now that I have a goal, and it's one of the things that I struggle with a lot in life in general. Like, I need a goal, so I have a plan, so I can work towards that plan, towards that goal. And I think that if we're able to do that, like, you tend to find that if you can work towards your goal and make positive steps, it tends to work a lot better. And that's kind of how I've had to approach this game in SoRare. And it's not only just the football side of things, it's definitely the baseball side of things. And I think that's, from my perspective, it's one of the things I struggle with on the basketball side, Kevin. I know that we're going to talk more about basketball well later, but it's something that I need help with from our community as well. So I'll be reaching out to a lot of you that do the basketball side for advice,
Yeah.
especially in the daily game.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be fun to get into that. I'm looking forward to it. Let's see what Sean Manaea pitching to Ohtani. What are your thoughts on Manaea for next year? Do you think this is sustainable? I know someone had asked that in the Discord, and I kind of gave my thoughts. But what do you think?
I mean, I don't think that whenever somebody has the greatest year of their career, I never think it's sustainable. That's just a cold hard truth of it. It's realistically, even if he comes back down a little bit, he's a good pitcher, right? Like he goes from being an excellent option to being a top end good option. So does that mean that I'm going to start him based on matchup? Yeah, he's still. I mean, and that hasn't changed from this year, and it won't change to next year. He becomes somebody that I will actively consider buying when I'm loading up on my teams next year. Like that's where the shift kind of happens. I never liked Dylan Cease, but Dylan Cease won the Cy Young, and he has that ability. So I was like, he's worth buying early here. And look at that. I mean, Manaea's striking out Shohei Ohtani, so like he's clearly okay.
Nice.
So
yeah, no, I mean, I think sometimes you see someone be successful, have a lot of wins, their ERA is low, but maybe the underlying stuff doesn't support it. And sometimes it's, well, I mean, like with Cease, it's whether he's got control of, his main pitches. And if he doesn't, the whole kind of house of cards starts falling down.
That's everybody though. This question of how often does he lose control is the main.
Right.
Like Kodai Senga is excellent. If he doesn't have control, he's terrible. He didn't have control yesterday. He was terrible. Like, and this is what happens. It's like, can you lock in at the times you need to lock in? And that's what's different between the best pitchers and the really good pitchers, right? Like Jack Flaherty has been up and down all over the place, but he pitched amazing yesterday and the biggest game of his life. And like the next game is going to be the biggest game of his life. And like, can these guys continue to do that? And that one's tough. And I mean, Manaea is on fire right now. I mean, the Mets look like the Mets have started this game off perfectly so far, right? Lindor leads off with a home run, and Manaea strikes out Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts. Like,
right.
Exactly what you need to do as a Mets fan. And as a baseball fan, I love this. Like the homer in me wants Shohei Ohtani to win a World Series if he's not playing against the Yankees, right? Because I think it's good for baseball. But no matter what happens, we're coming back. But Manaea, going back to it, man, if you keep this stuff up, good on you. I know that it's hard. Like anything can happen. I mean, who knows? Like the winter is long for a reason. So I don't know. As I need the track history up is what I'm really basically saying here. Like I need to know that you are that guy to do it. And I don't know that Manaea is that guy. I remember when Julio Rodriguez was that guy. I don't think he's that guy. You know what I mean?
He's definitely that guy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. I mean, I don't think he's going to be, he's very good. I think he's good enough.
He's very good. But my problem with a guy like Julio Rodriguez is that he blew up coming in, right? And he has the ability to peak out for you, but his peak outs are like 60. Like, not that that's bad. I'm really curious to see what his peak scores were for the year, because when it comes right down to it, he has the ability to go more consistently at 3 or 4 than a lot of the top end studs, and I'm not willing to run that risk. Right? It's like my Mighty Ducks thing. It's not worth winning if you can't win big. If he can hit me 100, I'm gonna risk him more with his ability to turn around a 3 or a 4. But I don't know.
I mean, I think J-Rod can. I think the difficult thing is the home park. It's just he has less opportunities to do it, right? So that and I think that's the only thing. But I mean, he's got the ability to steal bases, and I mean, he could hit 40 home runs in a season easily. Like, so,
yeah,
he's got.
It's those words, Cap, they drive me. That just for me as an engineer, I like facts more than like he could. When you say he could do something,
It's a fact that he could do it.
yeah, and it's a fact that Luis Gil could also win the Cy Young, right?
He could.
Yep, he could. That's a fact that Austin Wells, could be the best catcher ever. But no,
He could hit 40 home runs too. I'm
like
tired of the Austin Wells slander.
I like Wells. He was another guy that I wanted to bring up, but my battery just like hit 5% on my computer, so I'm about to die. And
Gotcha.
I say computer, thinking that like anybody younger than us knows what a computer is. My laptop, I guess. So
nice.
Yeah.
All right. You need to sign off then?
I do. I'm about to get kicked here anyway. So guys,
That sounds good.
Minaya has been excellent, and I'm looking forward to getting some work done and watching him pitch this game out. And we'll see what happens. I'm really curious. Kind of we're going to talk, internally about strategies for next week. But I am of the opinion that your strategy of a whole bunch of relief pitchers makes a ton of sense right now.
Yeah, I think depending on how it breaks down, I think it certainly could.
Dodgers relief pitchers. If you're going to throw a bullpen game, like I'm going to get, as long as your relief pitcher doesn't start the game, you're going to be good. You're going to get that 5 right.
That said, if they get blown up, you're giving up a bunch of points, and it's
That's what you take, right?
Yeah. All right. Good luck, everybody. We'll talk to you on Friday. Have a good one.
Later on.